How's it going, everyone? We are live, so we're doing a discussion today on the Super Nintendo, and I have my panel here. But first, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Renegade Operative, and today we have Washinator joining us. How are you, buddy?
Hello, I'm cool. I'm cool. How are you?
Awesome. Next up, we have Drillbit.
Oh, hello everyone. Should be a fun podcast.
Next up is Daybreaker.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Glad to be here.
Next up is If It's Not Fun.
Yo, how's it going? Just chilling.
And I think that's everyone, right? I got everyone so far.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna do the first question. The first question is: let's start this podcast off with your experience on the Super Nintendo. How were you formally introduced to the console itself? Who wants to go first?
I can.
Yeah, he could go first.
All right.
So the Super Nintendo was actually probably one of the first consoles I had any experience with. It's actually kind of a prominent memory that I have, just like locked in my head of the intro sequence for Super Street Fighter 2, where Ryu is like cast in shadow, and then like the lightning flashes, and then he comes into color and everything. That's always like stuck out in my head. So that was like my first gaming memory of the system, but that was the first system I ever had. Um, but I don't really remember too much more after that. It was kind of like because it was right at the tail end when like the N64 and like the PlayStation were like just like right in the door. So like I remember having the Super Nintendo, but then like just transitioning like almost immediately into the N64.
Hmm. Uh, right. So I guess I'll go next then. But yeah, I wasn't one of those people who played the. I didn't get the SNES when it was new. Well, it came out before I was born. I got it when I got it. I think my parents got it from a flea market back in like this was like maybe a year before PlayStation 2 had come out. So that's how I played it. I only played N64 at a cousin's house because he got all of the new consoles like PlayStation, N64, GameCube, PlayStation 2, etc. So the only stuff, and the funny thing is that I didn't start collecting SNES games at first, so I only had like two games I ever played for it, which was the Super Mario All Stars and also Aladdin. Funny enough, they're good games though.
Let's see. My first
So who wants to
experience.
go next then?
I can go next.
All right.
Well, for me, my first video game experience was not the SNES. Obviously, it was way before I was born. My first console was the N64. But after playing Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time for the first time, it got me wanting to go back and looking at some of the old games in the series because it was huge for me. I loved that game. So I went back and looked at Link to the Past, and I played Link to the Past, but it wasn't the SNES version. It was the Game Boy Advance version. And then I
Mm.
looked back some more and I was like, wait a second, this isn't right. This isn't the real game. So I started. That's when I got into emulation. Started looking back at all these games I never had a chance to play. I love collecting consoles, but they're expensive. So that's where I got into Earthbound. That's where I got into Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, all the rest, all these, and I started getting into it. That's kind of where my interest in SNES started.
Um, I didn't own a Super Nintendo. I think what happened was like my cousins owned them, and then I was the type that was like, well, I had the Genesis, they have the Super Nintendo, they live upstairs, so I'm gonna go up there and play their shit. That's how I started playing the Super Nintendo games. I think my first Super Nintendo game was Killer Instinct. And I remember I was a child. I
Oh,
won like a tournament doing KI, and I also played like Donkey Kong Country. I also played like Super Double Dragon. Got formally introduced to those games. I think there was also some Beavis and Butthead game on the like Super Nintendo, and I remember playing that over a friend's house as well. So it was just a sporadic experience. But I remember like really loving it so far. I think the game that got me into Super Nintendo the most was the first Street Fighter 2 because I was blown away by how that game was. and I was so used to MK, it was great to have like a refreshing experience with something different as well. And that game is like super deep and awesome. So Super Nintendo, I didn't have like a lot of hands-on time with it, but the time I had with it was great, and I also enjoyed the games that I played on it.
Hmm.
So are we
Yeah,
done with this?
Well, me, Oceanator still.
Go ahead, sir.
So I actually never did own a Super Nintendo. I had the Sega Mega Drive, but my neighbor actually had a Super Nintendo, and he had the third Zelda game, and I remember playing that. And sometimes I could loan the Super Nintendo and play it at home, and well, it was awesome. And then I got into emulators in the 90s, and well, I used that and played the Chrono Trigger, which was awesome.
All right, so are we done with this? Can we go to question number 2? Who wants to read that off?
Well, I could do it if you want.
Go ahead.
Let me just scroll up. Cite the improvements that you enjoyed with the Super Nintendo over the original Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, I didn't play much of the original NES, but I like the design more of the SNES. But it was a really sleek-looking system, in my opinion. And also, probably the quality of games jumped up from SNES, NES to SNES. Like if you look at Metroid to Super Metroid and how different those games are, mainly because the first Metroid, it's not really that good playing it nowadays because it's like kind of a maze, and they didn't have a map unless you had Nintendo Power.
I
So,
think the easiest thing to say mostly in this experience is the graphics and the music. Honestly, that was a huge
well, the
upgrade.
sound chip was far more improved,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the fact that Sega had kind of gotten the edge over them, at least early on in the gen, that Nintendo had to consider how to actually fight against that.
Yeah, correct me if wrong, but didn't they release the Super NES to combat the Genesis because they knew they had to upgrade?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was out in the market like a year or two before
it
the
was the
SNES.
16. Yeah, it was the 16-bit like war, if you could call it.
The Bit
And they,
Wars.
The Bit Wars.
yeah,
The Bit
the
Wars.
bit wars, of course.
And then Sega like went with the whole slogan of, "Oh, this is blast processing," and no one knew what it meant.
Blast Bros. No.
Well, yeah, nobody know what it meant. It just sounded cool.
That's all that mattered back in the day.
Oh, true, true. This
I
is why
personally
I always say, like, really quickly, I loved how console wars worked back then as opposed to today, where it was fun to actually have these discussions over just a bunch of bullcrap.
I agree.
Yeah.
What,
Definitely.
what were you saying? If it's not fun?
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, I was just gonna say personally about my opinions on how the SNES is better. I think besides the fact that sure the graphics are better, sure the music's obviously loads better, uh, the design got a lot better. I mean, the NES was still kind of running on arcade style games for the first half.
Well,
Late,
yeah, because it was like a new era back then. People weren't used to games lasting more than like 5 minutes.
hmm
Most like Castlevania was, well, back then the original Castlevania was considered pretty long, even though it's kind of a short game you can beat in like an hour
it's
if
just
you were good
hard.
enough.
Yeah, most games they weren't long; they were just difficult because they knew they wanted to keep your attention.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, you could see as the NES got older, and some of the later games that started coming out, like Kirby's Dream Land, for example, they became more fleshed out, not necessarily still arcade style. Points didn't quite matter. It was more about stories or stuff like that. And then when the SNES happened, the games became loads better. You had fully fleshed out games, really interesting designs, long games. Then RPGs obviously hit their stride as well. And I think that's for me, that's always the most noticeable thing. Hello.
Anyone else want to go on this?
Mm.
No, I think you all hit what I had to say.
Yeah.
I agree.
Honest, on a side note, what do you think about? Well, I was gonna add on to that. What do you think about like the later designs of the SNES when they changed them?
I swear that's a question in the document. Let me see. I think that's question number 7.
4.
It's
4.
7.
SNES, other SNES models and accessories.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's already like a question in the document. So we can just move on to the next one. So
Yeah, fair enough.
someone take number 3 if anyone wants to read it, or I can read it.
I'll read it.
Okay.
How did you feel about Nintendo's position of power at the time during their competition with the Sega Genesis? Did the Super Nintendo alter your standpoint, or did you admire both platforms equally?
I would have to say both in this instance, because I mean, both of them had like a lot of memorable games. I can't put one over the other, and if I did, it would be like these small little nitpicks, so to speak, because you can say that yes, I did not like some of the censorship in some of the Super Nintendo games, for like MK for example, but I could also say for the Genesis, some of their games sounded really, really bad in terms of the soundtrack when you compare it to like the SNES. It's a couple of soundtracks that are so to speak. So I would say they have both like flaws and positives at the same time.
my words exactly.
I mean, it really depends on the developer because the sound chip was so different compared to the SNES. I mean, even there's a lot of good Genesis games that have great music, like Castlevania, Bloodlines, and also Streets of Rage, Sonic. Oh, some of like the TMNT one isn't bad either.
Didn't they have their own rendition of like Turtles in Time called like
Yeah,
Hyperstone Heist?
Hyperstone Heist.
Yeah,
Hmm.
It's just probably because they couldn't just do a straight conversion because they actually had to make it specifically for the chip.
Yeah. So didn't like the soundtrack get like a little bit neuter in the process?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
It's like just those little nitpicks is like, but it's not like anything that devalues like the systems itself, because they still have a wide variety of games that are really, really fucking good. But yeah, I would say for people back then, it was either you could have one or the other, and you totally wouldn't miss out on anything. That's kind of how I felt back then.
Yeah, for me personally, since of course the transition to the 64 PS1 and the Saturn was like just like right there. When I first started getting into gaming, I really missed out on like the discussions of the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. But from what I saw of both at the time, from having a Super Nintendo and friends and neighbors having the Sega Genesis, it's just like I found that there was so much appeal to both systems. You had your games on the Sega Genesis, like your Sonics, for example, and then of course you had the notable Nintendo first party stuff like Zelda and everything for the Super Nintendo. But there is a pretty wide variety of games to be had on both systems. So yeah, I do agree with you, Ren, that regardless of what you had chosen as your primary system back in that day, I don't think you would have really missed out on a lot. Um, and yeah, you would have just had a good time either way.
Hmm. I guess it depends on preferences and what games were. Well, obviously the support from Capcom was stronger on the SNES. I mean, they still got some games on there. Same with Konami.
I don't know why, but I swear I heard it was a slew of Mega Man games on the Genesis, if I'm not too mistaken, and they weren't really the greatest. I don't know. I heard like some of these.
There's actually only one, and that was the Wily Wars. That never came out in the U.S.
Is
Well,
it?
yeah, you had
That
to
was
get
like
it
a European
through.
only.
Didn't you have to get it through like the Sega Channel or something?
Sega Channel.
Mhm.
Yeah. But going to Mega Man though, there was obviously Mega Man X. Who couldn't forget about one of the best franchises that's ever come out of Capcom's shithole?
Also 7. Nobody remembers 7 though.
Well, Mega Man 7 wasn't really that great, honestly.
I liked it.
It's pretty good.
I liked it to the extent that like you obviously have to play through the opening of the game, which was like the most boring part about the game. It wasn't until like way later on in the game where it gets way better, in my honest opinion. I just do not like the way they made the sprites bigger and shit. It just looked really janky and weird to
I
me.
agree.
Fair enough.
It just felt like the game was kind of screen crunched a little too. But like as far as the sprite work goes, like if you look past that issue, it's a pretty solid game. I don't think it's the best game in the series though. That I completely that I'm completely on board of. So, but the Mega Man X series though, we got one of the best Mega Man X games. You got X1, X2, which was followed by X3, which I personally think is my least favorite. I think it's about as bad as X6 is, in my honest opinion. I know it sounds like an unpopular opinion, but I fucking hated the music in X3. So, yeah. But there were some damn solid good games on as far as Mega Man games go on the SNES. Anything but Mega Man Soccer.
Well, yeah, that's just something we don't talk about.
Yeah. And you see why Capcom didn't do any more sports games after that.
Oh my god. I don't even remember any Capcom like sports games, so I think I got lucky on that one. All I did was like play a lot of EA bullshit on the Genesis.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Well, Capcom also gave birth to a really good SNES series called Breath of Fire.
Yeah.
Remember that when
Yeah.
that was a thing?
And
Remember
and honestly, that's like sort of part of my childhood. It's not like a series that resonated with me the most. Like that would obviously be like Final Fantasy and all that. But it had its own charm. But I really wish Capcom actually cared to do like another one.
Wasn't
I'm
the
sure
last
they
one
will at some
like
point.
a
The
mobile
last one
game?
we had was on mobile, which
Oh.
everyone did not like.
Oh, man.
And then
Yeah.
the one,
That's the
and
death
then,
of the series right there.
The
and
last,
then
the
the one
last like
before
mainline,
that.
the last
Rip that shit.
game we got was Breath of Fire 4 on PlayStation, right?
Well, Dragon Quarter on PS2, which is
Oh,
probably
yeah,
known as one of the worst RPGs on this system.
That's a yikes for me, bro. And it's a damn shame too, because this is coming from someone that absolutely loves Breath of Fire 2, which everyone for some reason thinks is inferior to the first one. I don't know why. It's weird. I don't know that, or I'm thinking of a different game, but I'm pretty sure the sequel is the one that like most people didn't really appreciate for some reason. So
Alright, so are we done with number 3?
Well,
Or did
well,
Moogle
then
go
some
yet
of the-
for like number
you think
3?
Kaneki would have wanted to say his part
Wait, about what?
about question 3?
Like Super Nintendo and Genesis, like did you admire both or did you favor like one over the other?
I did admire both, but there was certain games I like better on the Genesis than Super Nintendo.
Well, the problem with me is that I didn't get a Genesis until much later, so I'm kind of biased against Super Nintendo. Although
I-
Super Nintendo has really good games. I mean, Genesis has really good games.
I actually just realized what you guys were talking about because I had to look at the questions because I got in here literally like 20 minutes in on short notice. So.
Mhm. Yeah, it's all good. Like it happens,
Ah, no
man.
problem here.
I just got here right now.
That was a weird fucking hiccup on my part. But no, I think the only arcade game that I've played and I kind of regret because I used to like it when I was a kid. Growing up, I realized it was a horrible fucking port, and that was Primal Rage. And yeah, that's all I could really say because it was a very thoughtless, crappy, shitty, just broken
For the
port
consoles?
of the SNES version of Primal Rage was just it was not good.
Isn't
Yeah,
that the
that's all
game
I'll
with
say.
like the dinosaurs like fighting each other?
Yeah, and there was the
Yeah.
monkeys. You got the monkeys and shit. There's one character that actually farts and pukes on people.
What the
How was
fuck?
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
censored the fatalities on the SNES version because I know there
They
was
did.
a fatality that lets you piss on them, but I don't think it was on the SNES one.
Yeah, dude, I
Damn,
love
what a
that
shame.
game.
I
love
I
that
would
game.
just play the arcade version.
Yeah,
Oh.
shame Midway never revived that.
Well, okay, so you can play the arcade version on home consoles, but you have to get the Midway Arcade Treasures. I think it's 2
Volume
Second
2.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the
I got
only
that.
way. Yeah, that's the only way you can play the Primal Rage arcade version. Unfortunately.
Was it on the
I don't know.
Midway Arcade Treasures PSP port? Because I know that one was like a mashup of all the
think
other
it
ones.
was. I think it was. But all that I remember is that that game was on Midway Arcade Treasures 2, and it could have been ported later down the road, but it never really has gotten any love since then, which is a damn shame because
That is a shame, yeah.
that's a fucking great ass game, and I would love
They-
for the sequel to come out,
Well,
but it never did.
you can play the sequel, but
No,
you can't play the sequel, but you gotta find like a ROM of it because it never was officially released.
Yeah,
Oh,
it never actually came out.
because
Sadly.
it was not playable either.
Yeah.
It took a very long time before it was even playable.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't that same shit happen to like one of the Star Fox games where it's like it didn't
Yep.
come out in the West, and I think it wasn't until they did one of the mini consoles for Nintendo that it was playable for the first time in the West.
That's
Oh,
the
yeah,
it
SNES
was that
classic.
was Star Fox 2. It wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't just out from the West. It was never out ever. People
Really
had found a
now.
ROM years
Yeah.
back, but it was
Yeah.
they finished a full game and decided not to release it.
Now,
Because of N64.
Now, as far as the Sega Genesis version of Primal Rage goes, avoid at all costs. It's literally even worse than the SNES one, by a fucking margin. The music has gone awful, and the sound effects are actually desynced. And I wish I was joking about that. I even own the game on cartridge, and it's horrible.
Yeah, there's just so many ports of Primal Rage that I forget which one's actually
No,
close
all the
to the arcade.
Yeah, all the console ports are god awful because
Even
they were-
PlayStation?
No, I don't think it got a PlayStation. port.
Yeah, I'm pretty
It
sure
did,
it
it
came
did.
out on
It
PlayStation.
did? Oh, interesting, because I know that all the console ports of the game weren't handled by Midway. I think they were handled by Acclaim, I think, or some other
Yes.
company.
Yeah,
Acclaim.
Yeah.
Well,
and,
this
yeah.
sort of leads into the next question. Like, as a follow-up question, how did you feel about Super Nintendo conversion? This notion is all about how Pacific ports were handled going from arcade to the Super Nintendo. Tell us your thoughts on this.
Okay, so as far as conversion goes, it really takes a game to it really takes that game that can actually fit on the console, that can handle its hardware, you know? There's the Ninja Turtles arcade game that came out, like they did it on Nintendo, like what was it, the third game?
Fourth. It was
Fourth.
Turtles in
Oh,
Time.
Turtles in Time, yeah.
Oh, it's the fourth one, Turtles in Time, that's right. My
Yeah.
bad. Oh god, my
Yeah,
memory.
but it's
My
the second arcade game
my-
technically.
Yeah, my memory is so shitty. Holy shit, I'm sorry. No,
That's cool.
the fourth game, the fourth game got a really good console port. And this is the whole take notes companies, like this is how you do an arcade port.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like
I think the SNES version added more content too.
yeah, it added more levels. There was even they even changed the final boss. Like we got what, Shredder as the final boss. It's like
Mecha Shredder or something.
yeah, Mecha
like
Shredder.
That.
Yeah. And even the Battletoads arcade game, when that came to consoles and stuff, it's the same exact thing. Like, it's a notorious game for being difficult, but it was a damn good port of the arcade game.
Well, I think SNES had generally very, very, very good ports.
I
Absolutely.
agree.
Well, unless it's like Final Fight or Pit Fighter.
Oh,
I mean,
God,
those-
not Final Fight.
Okay, Final Fight, that's okay. But Pit Fighter, on the other hand, just fucking kill me already. That was, oh god, I don't even know what they were thinking with that.
Nothing.
Pit
And
Fighter,
the
you mean,
arcade-
you mean,
I mean, to
the
be
worst
fair,
fighting game?
yeah, to be fair though, the arcade game wasn't even that great either. So how do you make a shitty game on
Worse.
consoles? By making it shittier. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, great.
Hold on. So didn't Final Fight like release with one of the characters missing? Wasn't a guy?
Guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guy wasn't there.
And
It
then
was,
Yeah.
they had a later
They-
re-release.
it was inferior. Like
Yeah.
it functioned, but it was like an inferior port. That's all it was.
Then
Yeah,
they had
and
Final
then-
Fight Guy, and
Yeah.
Fun out of
they
Which
function.
was Blockbuster only, by the way.
Yeah, and then that became one of the that became one of the rarest games on SNES. Well, not like super, like one of the rarest, but like
Maybe
it became a
is
pretty
it
rare
like
game.
more expensive than Hagane?
No,
Yeah.
no, it's like it's a rare game, but I don't think it's as expensive as like Hagane or like all those big other games.
No, Hagane is pretty up there.
It's really up there, but Final Fight Guy is definitely a really hard to find game. It could go upwards to like $200 just for
Damn.
the cartridge alone. Yeah.
Actually, the Famicom, Super Famicom version of Final Fight Guy is fucking pennies compared to the US port.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's probably because they're like manufactured like crazy.
Well, yeah, and rentals weren't really a thing in Japan.
A lot of people have started to collect for Super Famicom because they realize it's way cheaper to collect for that than it is to collect for the US version of the Super Nintendo, because some of the games are like stupid expensive. Like even like some of the common games like Secret of Mana or Final Fantasy VI, like finding those on cartridge are like a complete nightmare now.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything over here tends to be like either super inflated or you can't find it. So I'm not surprised you can find more cards elsewhere or import them.
That's why
Yeah.
people use the magic E-word.
Emulation.
Yes.
Yeah, you're totally legit console.
Yeah. You know, the same thing that Nintendo's giving other other websites shit for, you know, trying to shut them down from trying to preserve their ROM sites.
That is a question
Shots
later.
fired.
It is
I
the
mean,
final
it's such-
question.
It's oh shit.
Like
Go on.
their job with like preserving stuff, that is the final question.
Yeah.
But I guess we can go to like number 5 about our like favorite games on the Super Nintendo.
Ooh.
Fuck, I have like a million of them, dude.
It's not an easy question, is it?
Well,
Yeah,
No.
it's like Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, fuck, the list goes on. Kirby Superstar.
Might need to double up. I got a feeling we're all gonna have some of the same games on here.
You're on.
Yep.
Okay,
Batman Returns,
hold
baby.
on. Let me start fucking going to the obscure games then. Top Gear, Run Saber, Soul Blazer, ActRaiser, Brain Lord. Let's see. Fuck, how deep can I go in this rabbit hole?
Until we reach the 2-hour mark.
Yeah,
Oh, God, no.
exactly. No, but just to name a few. I'll let everyone else talk.
Oh, go ahead.
Um,
So who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
But yeah, in terms of like, I guess if I had to pick 5, it'd be Super Castlevania 4, Super Metroid, probably Mario, maybe Mario World, or no, Yoshi's Island. That I'd probably pick that one. Also, what's another really well, there's so many, it's hard to pick. Probably Final Fantasy VI, which was 3 in the
Yep.
West.
Yep, that's one of my all-time favorites. Actually, 5 was another one of mine, but that
Yeah,
never came out in the US until like
Way
way
later.
later.
GBA port.
Yeah,
Well, I
until
thought
like
it
the
came out on
GBA.
PlayStation.
Oh,
No.
yeah, right. Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
It came out.
it came out on PlayStation, but the like actual properly translated version came out on the GBA.
Yeah,
So.
fair enough. Oh, probably like Mega Man X and also Final Fight 2.
Oh yeah,
If I had to pick
absolutely,
them.
absolutely.
But yeah, Yoshi Island, I'd say that's the best game on SNES by far.
Yeah,
In my
Well, just the
opinion.
soundtrack alone, yeah.
Let me see.
My
I'd say
my-
like well, sorry,
Oh, go
my
ahead.
bad.
Oh,
I
I
was
was just gonna.
say I was also gonna add on. I was gonna say also Crafted World and Woolly World are okay,
wait,
okay.
that's not even a SNES game.
but they're follow-ups.
Oh, okay. I
Sequels.
was gonna say.
Yeah,
Charlie, you're killing
not
me, dude.
SNES games, but I like Yoshi's Island a lot, so I had the need to mention them.
Actually, I want to take a moment to appreciate one of the best hidden gems on Super Nintendo that I feel like needs more love. The Lufia franchise. Lufia 1 and 2. If you haven't played that game yet, You need to bust out the fucking emulator and play that shit like right goddamn now. Those games are absolutely amazing. That's all I'll say.
If you want, well, if you want like an underrated game, there's also Pitfall on SNES. It was on
Ooh.
everything, but I like the SNES version.
What?
Was that like the Atari Pitfalls? What you're talking about?
Yeah.
Pitfall,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Mayan Expedition.
No, he's
The
clearly
Mayan-
talking about Lester the Unlikely, dude.
No, Pitfall, the Mayan Adventure. That was actually a pretty solid game. It was on everything
Alright.
though.
I've heard of it.
Uh,
I never played it.
Anyway, Daybreaker, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, if I had to pick a couple of my favorites, obviously probably my all-time favorite is Demon's Crest. I absolutely fell in love with that game playing it through emulation. That was the first time I had ever played it, and just ever since I've absolutely loved that game. And it's got a kind of sentimental thing too for me, because that was when I bought my physical copy of it. It was one of the first Super Nintendo games that a friend of mine who's no longer with us actually got to see me play in its entirety. So that was actually pretty cool to have that. Couple other ones are like Flashback, the Search for Identity. That one's really fun. Nostalgic there because I used to watch that. Like my older brother play that all shit ton. The Castlevania, Super Castlevania is great. All the Final Fantasies are good. Like there's just so many
Even Mystic
absolutely.
Shut up! Just shut up!
Quest. It is a Final Fantasy
Just
quest technically.
shut up! No, get out!
Different
out.
strokes
Don't
for
ever-
different folks, but
Don't ever bring that game up to me ever again, you fuck.
there's
It has
just
a great soundtrack though.
I fucking hate that goddamn game. It's so bad.
there's just definitely so many good Super Nintendo games. It's really hard to just like narrow it down to like any like top list.
You're always going to
Yeah.
be forgetting something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
I forgot about Demon's Crest because I actually was
Yeah.
playing that recently. I found an actual cartridge. Of course,
Damn.
nowadays it's really expensive, but it's nice to have.
Well, it's a really it's gotten super rare. So
Yeah.
Like
Trying
all
to
It's
this-
getting up there.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is on the Nintendo Switch SNES library if you.
Yeah,
if you
but
wanna
there's
play it.
audio issues with that port, so
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of
Hopefully they
like some that I really like. Like mine is like super general, like Contra 3.
Oh,
I
fuck
really enjoyed like Mortal Kombat 2 on SNES. I also loved what is it,
You
Turtles
didn't
in
play
Time.
Ultimate?
Ultimate is I prefer the port elsewhere, honestly, but I mean it's fine for what it is. But I just like the graphics on like the arcade version better.
I usually play MK on like the arcade versions. Like there's nothing wrong with
didn't-
the
I didn't have the
console
arcade
version.
so I only played on SNES.
Yeah, I thought Super Double Dragon was great, and also Link to the Past. Fucking love that game.
I know
Link
the
to the
worst.
Past is the shit.
I know the
Link
worst.
to the Past.
Super
the best
Metroid, another one that I've really been playing like recently, and honestly,
Which Metroid?
Super Metroid.
Super.
Oh, super! I actually beat that recently, and man, I forgot how like legendary that game is. Just because of like aesthetic wise and everything is just perfect in that game.
I just started playing it, and the presentation is like awesome, dude. Like I
Oh,
really
I
am
know.
loving it.
Like
Yeah.
the hand drawn sprites, just the work, the colors, the movement, everything is like damn perfect in that game.
Yeah.
Also, that initial fight with Ridley, that really like threw me for a
Oh,
loop
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If you definitely, if you liked Super Metroid, like definitely dive into some of those the ROM hacks that are out there. There's a lot of remixes of the game that are just crazy. Like
Yeah,
there's
like
like
the impossible one. Oh god, that fucking
Shout out
game.
to the
there is shit in that game that you can do like mechanic wise with like specific jumps and everything like that I had no idea was even possible.
Oh, no,
until
the
those.
speed running for this game is insane.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to get more into Metroid after playing that. Like, I also heard is the Game Boy Advance games or like the ones that were on the like handhelds, were they any good?
Yes.
Oh, the Game Boy Advance games are
100%. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have
All
to
of
check
them were
those out
fantastic.
too.
There were a lot of good series that started on the SNES. You kind of forget.
That evil Samus suit was crazy.
I mean, I'm thinking like no one's mentioned, but I'm sure everyone likes Chrono Trigger. You have Earthbound, Tetris Attack.
Well,
Y'all
I love
play-
Chrono Trigger, and I don't mind Earthbound. I haven't really played it enough to form an opinion, but I'm one of those guys that doesn't really like. I don't mind Chrono Trigger. Don't get me wrong, but my heart will always go to Chrono Cross. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I love that game to death. So
Interesting.
yeah,
I
that's
really
they'll be for there'll be a discussion for another time later down the road.
Have y'all played the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fighting game on there? That shit was.
Oh yes,
Oh yeah.
dude, yes, the fighting edition. Oh my
Yes.
god, I love that game so much.
Megasaurus versus Megasaurus.
Dude, I used to play
I
as
only played the beat 'em up, so I never had experience with the
I-
fighter.
I used to play as what is his goddamn name? Goldar. I used to play as him all the fucking time, just to piss off my friends. It was the greatest thing ever. 'Cause he
That
just-
was actually when we had our FGC scene here where I live. That was actually one of the first tournaments we held. Like it was a free entry tournament that we held of playing the fighting edition. Yeah, it was fun as fuck.
That's great.
Also, thanks to emulation, I can play Godzilla. That that tournament.
Oh,
Oh, the
Kaiju
Godzilla.
that never
Daikaiju.
came to the West.
Yeah.
That game is so much fun, man.
Dude, he
I'm
plays
surprised-
Mothra on cheese people.
I'm surprised, like, why it never came to the West in the first place.
Licensing, probably.
Was there actually a reason why?
No, I don't think there's an official reason why. I know it was in Nintendo Power though.
Yeah,
but it probably.
Yeah, King of the Monsters, it was called.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe those Super Nintendo Godzilla we got just didn't sell, and they didn't bother with the other one.
I do remember that from AVGN when he like talked about it very vaguely.
Yeah.
And he got so pissed. It was great.
I was there with them. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I honestly would be pissed too, because that's like a dream game for anyone, is to get like a fighting game that's Godzilla. And then we kind of did like
Well,
way later in the year.
Well,
Yeah,
on
way later.
PlayStation and GameCube.
Yeah.
Destroy all monsters melee.
Fuck yeah, that game was awesome.
Yo, they need to remaster that game.
But yeah, it's man, there's some really obscure stuff out there. Some really good shit.
I also liked Super Mario World, Earthworm Jim on a SNES. Is that
Oh, you
really
fuck-
good?
I prefer I actually prefer the Genesis version though.
I never played the Genesis version.
The Genesis version, I don't know why, it just felt faster. It didn't feel as sluggish.
I hear it was
processing.
Yeah.
I hear it was actually complete at least because the SNES did have no extra. Was it?
Yeah.
They lost a level.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like the gameplay a little bit better on this Genesis version than I did on the SNES one. So
And
Was
then-
personal
then
preference.
yeah.
And then there's Battletoads and Double Dragon.
Oh yeah.
They
That game was
need to
fucking
bring that
awesome.
back. A crossover between Battletoads and Double Dragon.
Hey,
Woo!
hey, we got a
Double-
crossover. We got a crossover, Battletoads and Killer Instinct. So hey,
Yeah. Too bad
You know,
their new beat 'em up game is rest in peace.
yeah, we won't talk
Why
about
don't,
that.
why don't they just add Rash and Smash?
Just do the old art style. I don't see what was wrong with it. The new art
Well,
style is
it's
just
not
bad.
even
dude.
just-
Yeah.
To me,
it's
it's not
probably
It's the
it's mainly
gameplay.
because doing hand drawn animation is really time consuming and hard. So
And
they
there's-
probably just went with Flash.
And there's something with like the Battletoads cannot jump in this new game.
The
Wait, what?
gameplay. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't jump.
Well,
Okay, that's
Okay.
odd.
Fascinating.
Maybe
As
we-
you
no,
say,
they can't-
frogs,
they-
the
can't
highest
even
jumping
run.
animal, as far as things go, can't jump. Okay,
The frogs
okay,
can't
well, we
jump.
frogs
are
can't jump.
They can't even run. Like,
Talk about that for a second, like you know, that makes sense.
well, we are deviating a bit, so maybe we should move
Yeah.
on.
It's true, but
numbers.
that is just too hilarious for words.
That's
man.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
That's
can't
ridiculous.
jump, can't run.
So number 6, what are your least favorite games on the Super Nintendo platform? Well,
Mm,
probably all of the movie games because they wasted all my fucking time.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
I
a
have,
few garbage.
Actually, I have a contingent to that because Batman Returns on Super Nintendo is really fucking
You going with the
Cover.
easy ones?
Well, yeah, yeah. Most 90% of the time, all the movie games are garbage.
Yeah, any licensed game from something, they're just trash.
Yep.
Mortal Kombat
For the
was
most part.
horrible on that system.
Well,
The first one.
I'm trying to think, like, because
No
I remember
blood?
MK, yeah, they didn't have any blood or gore.
We-
This game isn't necessarily bad to me, but I feel like it was an oversight with the way they programmed it, and that's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. Dude, the AI in that game is so fucking ridiculously hard. I could
Oh,
not stand
dude.
it.
So basically, MKAI got it.
Yeah, read your inputs. It's like I can't play that game single player.
I only played the Genesis version.
Yeah.
That might be better, but on Super Nintendo, like, just get ready for some cheapness.
Alright.
So basically, like where you try to go for a jumping attack, but they immediately jump and kick you out of it.
Yes.
It kind
Okay.
of reminds me of like the MK games where they would always just constantly kick you out of the air if you tried to jump.
This is definitely low hanging fruit, but Shaq Fu.
Oh,
That's like
I
a meme
actually,
game at this point.
yeah, but I actually have a little history with that game.
Ren's
I
favorite game?
no,
Well,
fuck you.
my uncle one time rented a couple games. He rented Secret of Mana and another RPG, and then for shits and giggles, because he thought it was fucking hilarious, comes in. He's like, "Hey, I bought this game called Shaq Fu. It's got Shaquille O'Neal on it," and I'm like, "What the fuck is that? Like, is that supposed to be like a beat 'em up or some shit?" Like, I was a kid, so I didn't really know any better. I booted it up, and it was like. I honestly didn't even bother playing it more than like a minute to realize that this game's not really fun at all. And like it was stupid.
I can't believe I played that fucking game as a kid. Like, my aunt had it, and then I was curious. I was like, there's nothing to play. I don't feel like playing Killer Instinct. Pop that game, in. And then when I realized that Shaq's leg went through my enemy and I could not do shit about it, and the hit detection was so awful, I was like, what am I playing? This game is garbage. Like,
There
Your
is a
favorite game, man.
hell
there
no.
is there was a legit reason why the controls were so bad. I think someone did a video saying that they like put too many animations on all the moves, so everything was so slow.
Take all of the animations if you have to fix it. Like, what the fuck is going on there?
I mean,
Yep.
shit. They might have. I mean, if we had a Shaq Fu game, they might as well have made Michael Jordan Fu.
So supposedly, oh god, I think there is like games dedicated to like singular basketball stars. Like I think there was one called Windy City or something. I don't know.
Oh,
You wanna
shut up
know-
and jam.
Yeah,
like what was that guy's name? I forgot. James Charles Barkley or
Charles
something.
Barkley.
Yeah.
Shut up and jam.
Yeah.
If I want to play a celebrity game that's actually fun, I'll just go play Michael Jackson.
Also,
Moonwalker.
I keep hearing like I remember Moonwalker. Yeah, I keep hearing
It's
that
fun game.
I keep hearing that the Terminator 2 sequel, the game, was like just terrible. Not the arcade
It's
game,
fucking
the other
awful.
one. Yeah.
No, and any of the Terminator games are bad.
Well,
They're-
except
Fact.
Sega CD, but I guess Genesis does when
Sega
Nintendo.
CD.
No.
Sega CD was just beyond like ridiculously difficult though. I like unless you have a lot of patience and time to get through that majority of like the first levels in the game, it really that's the thing. It's going to turn off a lot of people from experiencing what the rest of the game is.
I did like the arcade game. I really did, but probably now.
It
I
didn't translate well to fucking Super Nintendo and Genesis, let's
Ye-
be honest.
Yeah, it's like
I'm
that
a-
seems like a light gun game if you ask me.
Well, there are light guns or the systems, but you're gonna need a lot of batteries.
It just
Yeah.
seemed like the arcade ports were just better suited for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah.
There is a game that I actually absolutely despise. That's not Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. And it's called Lagoon.
Never
And-
heard of it.
Okay, well, basically, it's an action RPG, and for some fucking reason, and I don't know why, they make it so that you have to run into the enemies to attack them.
Oh, this is the game with the really short sword, right?
Yeah. And it's literally the worst fucking thing in existence. And when you do get like some way of attacking, it doesn't even feel like you're like even doing anything. and the music is literally it's so generic for like what you would expect out of an RPG. It's such an uninspired game.
It's
And I get it, it's the early 90s, but holy fuck, the least you could do is put an effort into it. Like, we got games like fucking Super Mario World that were launch titles for the game. We got fucking Link to the Past. The least you could do is look at those games and realize what appeals to the masses.
Oh
Not
my!
just shit out this game and hope to fucking god that people buy it.
I mean, the game is just it's frustrating because they had even the original Zelda had better gameplay. I mean, it's basically like Link to the Past, but the sword is so short that you have to be like a pixel away to hit it.
That's the problem with Lagoon. It was trying to be Zelda, but it was just so badly designed that the flaws outweighed like the good of the game.
Just play
And it's
Hong
like-
Kong 97. You're good.
It was bad.
Play Bebe's Kids, because I saw
That's your
I-
game, man.
I saw someone
Oh.
review that shit. I forgot his name. I think it was
Hey,
a Nostalgia Critic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is Bart's Nightmare as well. There's a lot of crappy
Oh,
Simpsons
God.
games.
Oh, I played that shit. Is that the platformer where you can actually fall through geometry and you can't get through like one of the first stages where Bart is like some sort of he's like an animal or something, and it's so bad because you fall through the ground like 5,000 times, dude. It's ridiculous.
Pretty much.
Damn.
I forget there's so many good games at SNES. There are some pretty better ones. Do you guys remember all the Mario educational games that came out in the SNES?
Oh.
Yeah, but those are just meme games.
Like
I
Mario
mean-
is Missing, Mario's early years, Mario's
Mario
Time Machine.
teaches typing.
Mario is Missing would have been great, but they made it too educational.
All I remember is all the YouTube poofs people made of Mario's typing.
I
Yeah.
hope that. I hope there was a hack where they made Mario's Missing actually fun and not educational.
Have a
Yeah,
basketball
like, who wants
game.
to play a game where you learn about Thomas Edison?
They really missed the chance to Luigi's actual first game, and it had to be an educational.
Well, we did get Luigi's Mansion later.
They
Took 10 years.
Thank God. For 10
Yeah.
years!
they
After their first adventure with Luigi, they decided maybe we should give it a break.
they have their basketball game up here on the worst sites of like NES games, and it's one called like Rap Jam Volume 1. And
Never heard of
apparently
that.
Never heard
there's
that.
I don't think you want to hear of it because the graphics look fucking awful, dude, and apparently there's no music. So during the time of like
Ooh.
NBA Jam,
Wait, it's called Rap Jam. There's no music in it.
yeah, Rap Jam Volume 1, no music.
Oh, I was gonna also mention Super Noah's Ark, the Doom clone.
Yeah,
Oh.
but
I
would
haven't
chalk
played
up.
that, but that
I would chalk
that
that up
game
to
is
being like a
awesome.
meme too, because like you can even
It
get
is
that
pretty
on
much a
Steam.
meme game, but it is funny to think that they made a Doom clone out of fucking Noah's Ark.
Looks more
It's
fun than Mario educational game.
Mario is missing.
At least it actually functions like Doom. So
There
it's
was like a
Oh, yeah.
there was also a
At
Doom
least it's a
clone
game.
game of a cereal game.
Chex Quest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a Doom clone as well, but that was on PC.
I'm trying to think what
You
else
could,
is
you could play Chex Quest with Brutal Doom.
That's true.
Ooh,
I'm trying to think. Was there also other Turbo SNES games that we'll forget?
Well, let me think. Well,
I mean, there's like
Oh,
a
there's
shit
Hook.
ton of there's like a shit ton of sports games on the Super Nintendo, but like for me personally, it's like I just typically stay away from stuff that doesn't really interest me. So it's like I don't intentionally play
Oh.
like anything that could be quote unquote
I-
bad.
I got one for y'all. Action 52.
well, that's on
Is
NES.
it- Isn't
Oh,
that
well, whoops.
something? Yeah, I most of these games like we're talking about, if they're bad, I just listen to like AVGN reviewing them because
Yeah,
that's where
Yeah.
it mostly comes from to me.
Look, if I want Ren to play a bad game, I'll just send him Drake and the 99 Dragons.
And then I will block you on Discord and I will block you on Steam.
Oh, but then why you accept it?
I accepted it, but it doesn't mean
It's
I
free
won't
money.
block them after.
Stuff, Ren, you're you're obliged to play that now.
No. So after this, I'll kick
69
you.
cents.
After this, I'll kick you out of the server. Don't worry. So next we have number 7. What are your thoughts on other SNES models and accessories? Examples include the Game Genie, Super Game Boy, and the Super 8.
Super Game Boy is dope as hell. I just actually
Yeah,
bought one not too long ago.
Yeah, I own a
Yeah, I
Super
was
Game Boy as
just
well.
about to say
You can't play. The
Super
only
Super
downside
Game Boy.
is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the only downside is you can't play Game Boy Color on it.
Yeah, but I just think that that's like the most epic idea ever. It's like the perfect accessory to be
Yeah.
able to play the Game Boy games.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't include like the color ones, which is sad, but still, it's pretty epic.
Some games would even have compatibility where they would add color, like the Power Rangers Game Boy one.
Mhm.
Also, some of the I think like the Zelda and Metroid one.
Yeah, I remember
know
having
the-
like different sprites for playing Link's Awakening with the Super Game Boy. It's really cool. You can change colors for all of
Yeah,
everything.
then we got DX.
Yeah, and like I know that like you get custom borders for a lot of the games. Like I know the Pokemons, all the Donkey Kong Land games, the port of Donkey Kong Country. Which, if you haven't played the port of Donkey Kong Country on Game Boy, it's fucking a marvel. It's like crazy that they were able to freaking port that game to Game Boy.
You know what also has custom support? Mortal Kombat on Game Boy. One of the worst games ever made for it.
I don't know. Fighters just really don't translate that well onto Game Boy.
Look,
Yeah.
You don't say.
look. Just imagine playing Mortal Kombat on Game Boy, but it's running like at 10 frames a second.
I played
I
Killer
did.
Instinct on Game Boy, so I know. I have
Well,
a kind of heads up on like, oh yeah, this isn't that great. I think like the only one that was actually somewhat good was like, I think SNK had like a King of Fighters Pocket or something to that extent, and that one was pretty decent from what I remember.
Damn.
Joe, have you played MK3 on Game Boy?
No, but I actually haven't, but it looked pretty bad. The one I remember there was MK4 on Game Boy Color, I think, and I think they just use like really pixelated FMVs for fatalities.
Damn.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I don't really have any sort of answers to this one, just an explanation, so to speak. What the hell is the Game Genie?
It's basically like Game Shark Action Replay, where it just gives you like stuff like infinite lives or infinite continues, or just lets you mess around with the game.
I had to
Yeah,
ask
it's like
because
a
go ahead.
cheating system.
Yeah, I had to ask because there was a giant ass stand of them advertising the Game Genie, and the main guy or whatever, he looked like Cinder from Killer Instinct on the front. And I always wondered what the hell was that, but I never knew what it was until now.
Yeah. Basically, it was like Action Replay where you could just give yourself infinite health. Sometimes it can help you beating like really hard games.
I heard that those are personally getting like super expensive now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
This is why like a lot of people are using well, for most emulators, like most people are using like other save files from other members, like they have them save on GameFAQs, I believe.
Well, it's so easy to just use cheats in game anyways.
That's true if the game has them. Like some games they barely have the cheats that you want, so like basic invincibility, stuff like that, so it depends.
I mean, personally, I don't really use Game Genie mainly because I want to try to beat the game as legit as possible.
Yeah, this is a PSA. Don't be like hip hop gamer.
I think they're just
Yeah.
fun to mess around
Of course, unless it's Ninja Gaiden 3 and you can't and you lose, and once you lose all your lives, go back to the beginning.
Hold on, didn't they fix that game for SNES?
Yes, they added passwords, and they removed the stage 6 glitch from Ninja Gaiden 1.
Okay. Cause I heard 3 is like virtually unplayable.
Oh, on NES, yeah, because you basically have to not die. You have to not die too many times, or else back to the beginning.
I look at cheats as if like they're just things to fuck around on.
Yeah.
Because if I beat
Yeah.
the game already and I just want to mess around on, I'll just boot up those cheats and like put on the God mode cheat and just dick around.
Well, yeah, even
That's
like
what I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people would do it all the time on PlayStation 2, like with Kingdom Hearts, where you can like have Sephiroth and Terra in the same room and just fight both of them.
I
It
think it's a good
is
way.
good.
Uh,
Good.
it's just a good way of extending. Because back in the day, when you got one game every you know, 4 months, 5 months, whoever, maybe probably longer, buying the Game Genie, you could extend the life of all your games just by messing around, fucking around with it, trying to see what you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah, it is a podcast for another day because we do have that planned like later in the works, but there are certain people that will just look at cheats and be like, "Hey, this is my opportunity to cheat through the game if I can't beat it normally." And that philosophy I really don't agree with, to be honest.
I
I've
mean,
looked.
it's. Oh, sorry. You go first,
Oh,
Movie.
I was gonna say, I looked at it as if, like, if you cheat through the game to get through the story for your first time, I feel like that's kind of a hollow victory, in my honest opinion.
I agree.
Yeah,
And it's
like
like,
the.
yeah.
It's like what?
yeah, but it's like, I don't look at it as like you can't cheat in a game because you're not really earning it. It's not like that at all for me. Is if you cheat, then it's whatever, but maybe you should actually play the game legitimately before you start cheating.
Yeah.
So you can actually experience what it's like for everyone else to actually play the game than just cheesing through the game and experiencing that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that Mike Matei brought up, but that's like going to be like another podcast discussion
Yeah,
for
you
another
mean
day.
save states is like it's like a gray area for me, honestly. I like to sum it up. I can understand some people using it for really hard parts of the game if you want to give yourself unlimited continues,
Hmm.
because you still have to beat the game legit anyway. It's not like
On,
it gives you. It's not like it gives you God mode.
Yeah, on the topic of accessories though, my favorite accessory has always been the Super Game Boy because because I fucking love that thing to death. Because if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have experienced Samus Returns or like RC Pro Am and all those games on Game Boy, even Super
You're
Mario
not-
Land.
You're not the only one. We were just
With-
talking
I-
about how awesome Super Game Boy is.
Well, okay, well, I wasn't here because I was going to eat, so you can't give me shit for that.
No, it wasn't shit. It's just you agreed with us. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, has anyone
exactly.
here ever owned a Super Scope?
What
Because
is
I don't think I've ever seen
what
it.
is the
I've never
Super
even
Scope?
seen one in person.
Okay, I've never owned it, but my dad's friend, like his kid actually had Battle Clash and Metal Combat, I think it's called, and those games are actually stupidly fun, even though it took like 8 fucking C batteries, which was ridiculous, by the way.
Yeah,
It was fun to use when it actually worked.
Yeah, imagine being a kid and asking your mom to take you to Walmart to get more C batteries, and then she tells you no because you're spending like $20 on all
Imagine
many
going
C
to
batteries.
Walmart stage.
Imagine going to a Walmart for batteries. You can literally go to a dollar store and get like a package of them for like $2.
Yeah, but those are crappy ones.
Yeah,
They're
I
like
Well, it's
off-brand
better.
ones.
It's better than fucking paying $20 for like a 4-pack of C batteries.
I suppose. I mean, I didn't even know what games for the not Super Soaker, sorry, Super Scope.
Super
just-
Soaker.
No, I only know I know a few of them because, like I said, I grew up with them. There's Metal
There's-
Combat, Battle Clash. Those are the only
Terminator.
two that. Well, those are the only two that kind of, like, kind of go out to me, So.
Oh, no one's ever gonna mention the mouse for Mario Paint.
Oh, I forgot.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. No.
Did not know
Dude,
that.
I couldn't have forgotten that. I actually feel bad for forgetting about that.
Yeah, I did not
Yeah.
know they had a
Mario
mouse.
Paint is
Hey,
actually
Mario Paint
good.
surprisingly gives you a lot to work with. People were even still making remixes on it for a long time.
Yeah, there's a guy that I know that does music compositions, and there's actually someone that used to know a good friend of mine named Tom Bob Blender. Who he doesn't do them anymore, but when he did, some of the shit that he came up with is utterly ridiculous. Like, I didn't even think it was possible to do in Mario Paint.
Yeah, the worst one is when someone made Despacito on Mario Paint.
That's just why. I mean, I heard someone do Through the Fire and Flames. that's even more ridiculous. So
But let's move on to question number 8. So, what are some policies and issues you didn't enjoy with the SNES itself?
the goddamn fucking lockout chips on
Yeah,
everything.
Yeah.
region
Well,
lockouts.
that was-
Just region locking is
Yeah,
bad.
but that
It's
was a
bad.
common thing at
You-
the time.
You know, it's bad when you had to
True.
pull out a pair of pliers, take out a piece of plastic that would stop the fucking cartridge from going in it. You can legit,
Mhm.
that's all you had to do, and you could play Famicom games on your SNES by just doing
Yeah.
that alone.
Yeah, but I guess they did it so that the average consumer couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was stupid.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Also, but yeah,
Other than
That's
that,
yeah,
actually-
the lockout chips were annoying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the only problem I actually have with
Also,
with the
how the
policies and
SNESs would sometimes turn yellow.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
the plastic.
can't that
Yeah,
be
the
fixed
weird-
though?
it
gonna
can
say,
be. It's a
You can, like,
process, though.
wash it down, but
If your SNES
Yeah.
looks like a fucking 80-year-old man's fucking white pair of briefs,
What?
Damn, man.
Look,
you got a lot of
Yeah.
experience with 7-year-old men.
I said 80-year-old
Oh.
fucking
70
white briefs,
That's
man.
worse.
There's a
Look.
fucking problem with the SNES there turning yellow and shit.
have you ever seen like an SNES graveyard? It's all yellow.
Yeah, it's nasty.
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, the only thing I saw is that there is a process that you can do to restore it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically you do like a concoction, and you just bathe
It's-
it and let it
well,
sit for
From
like
what
a
I
certain
know, the
time.
reason it's happening is because the plastic on it is getting it's a bacteria that's causing it to like hollow out. So it's turning that color, and it's like rotting the the plastic on it.
I have a
And
question. Does this happen to all the other models, or is it just like
Yes.
the North
I
American
think-
ones? Okay.
I think it's
Yes.
specifically all of the consoles.
Yeah,
Even-
probably
even
because
the-
of the
even-
plastic they use.
Yeah,
I can't
even the
confirm it because I've
Yeah.
seen a Model 2 yellowed. The store
Jeez.
here actually
yeah,
has one, and he was discounting it for that reason.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess not too many people are fond of buying a piss yellow SNES.
No.
Telling
Oh,
you,
yeah.
man, it's the color of a fucking 8-year-old man's briefs because he's fucking pissing in them all
Christ.
the time.
Jesus
So,
Christ.
so it could join with Jaguar with that, that toilet add-on.
We don't
The-
speak of Jaguar. That's like
We don't
I-
speak of the Jaguar or the 3DO, sir.
Oh,
Look,
God.
3DO's Ren's favorite console. He
Hell
plays
no.
Plumbers Don't Wear
Hold
Ties.
on, hold on, hold on.
I have
Jaguar
heard of
has
that game.
games.
I actually, you know what? I actually forgot the 3DO exists until you brought it up. So fuck you for bringing it up.
Nobody fucking owned a 3DO. It was $700
So
back
It
then.
was
You could afford
$700.
Was that? Oh no, was that the system though that had the best version of was it Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo?
Yes.
Yeah, it had its own
Seven-
unique sound. It had its own unique
Oh.
soundtrack too.
But why? So people would buy $700 just for that.
Also, Doom's on there, but you don't want to play it.
No,
You
just play-
don't want
just
to
play it
play
on
it
P-
because of the price.
Just play it on PC. It's easy to emulate. It's easy to buy right now.
Well, you can play Doom on everything. Even
Yeah,
your
yeah. I was
fridge.
gonna say Doom's
Yeah.
literally on everything
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this point.
Doom is on my feet right now, right, Jordan?
You get-
Okay then. Okay.
Jesus Christ. Oh, that I don't know why that reminded me, but what do you think about the SNES versus the Super Famicom in terms of design?
Ooh.
I wasn't a fan of the purple and gray colors. I kind
I
of
like-
like
I
the
like the
control.
Famicom.
I kind of like the controller where it had green, blue, red, and yellow.
I like the
I
Famicom.
I
so much.
honestly, as someone that's grown up with the console, I kind of appreciate it for that very reason. So I can't really say that I hate the design. I've grew up with it, so I honestly, to me, by the fact that it's nostalgic to me, I honestly have to disagree. I
Well-
don't think it's bad in any way at all as far as design. I think the Japanese one looks better, yeah, but like this is something I've kind of grown up with.
No,
And,
that
like,
no, that's
it has appeal to me for that reason. So
personally, I think a mix of I like the actual like shape of the SNES better, but I do like the colors. Like the color buttons look very nice on the Famicom.
yeah,
Yeah. That's why there are custom SNES controllers where you can get the Famicom scheme.
But in actuality, I don't think the SNES actually looks that bad. In terms of just the shape
No,
and
it
the two
really
sliding
doesn't.
things, it looks pretty nice.
I think the colors on it, like the coloring, I think is honestly like pretty damn good. I like the choice of the gray and the purple. And the controller to me, it's that
I-
controller that resonates with me all the time whenever I see it. You know, I always see the purple buttons and stuff, and
Well,
that's pretty.
also I think the buttons are slightly different on the American one since they're more concaved.
Yeah,
At
they're
least the Y
concave.
and X.
Yeah, I have to agree with if it's not fun. I think that the color scheme for the console, it looks like really nice. But as far as the shape goes, I would prefer the Japanese one. But both of them look really great, so it's not really anything like super hard to hate here.
No,
No.
not at all.
Unless you're a Genesis fanboy.
Yeah, the Japanese controller looks colorful. I like that too.
We ain't gonna talk about the Model 1 Genesis, right? How
Uh,
terrible that
fuck.
looked.
are you
Fuck what
talking
I
about
asked.
the Mega
I have
Drive?
Yeah.
I
Ugh.
own it mainly because I found it at a yard sale.
It
But
just
hey, maybe I'll put a Sega CD on it someday.
well, we already did a Genesis discussion, but it just looks so dated compared to the Genesis rendition that came out.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know why it looks so fucking old. It looks like a radio.
I think okay. The only thing that the Genesis has over the SNES is maybe the controller layout.
Three
But
buttons.
like,
Wait, really?
well, yeah, I personally really enjoy the button layout on the SNES or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Genesis controller a little bit better. But that's not to say that I don't hate the SNES controller at all. I love that thing to death. I just think the layout on the Genesis controller is a little bit more accessible.
Let me see. Let me look. Because I just
Yeah,
like.
but it would have been nice to have triggers at least.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 6-button controller, right?
Oh,
well,
that's
both controllers because they're kind of like similar in that regard.
Yeah, but I just remember like they had like 2 renditions. It was 6 buttons, and there was the other one which was 3.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, try playing Street Fighter on Genesis, the 3-button one where you have to
There's-
hold start to switch between light and heavy.
Fuck that.
It's pretty bad.
But let's move on to the next question. So, number 9, if there was anyone curious about delving back into the SNES, then how would you personally get them started with the most convenient route to go if they were curious to play any of the older games or consoles?
This is easy.
Emulation.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Down.
Well, you
I
definitely
mean,
can't get a SNES Mini anymore, so.
Well, you can. No, I don't.
Can
think
you?
So.
Or
I mean, I have
Yeah,
mine, so I don't have to
mean,
worry
there's
about that.
stable-
but-
I was gonna say I have
Second
mine too.
Yeah, second hand you can get one.
Let me see.
But then again, there are
They
many ways.
still- They still sell them. Okay, yeah.
Because basically, if you look at it, like emulation, you have a plethora of platforms you can choose from. It's like you can freaking slap that shit on your, on your cell phone. You can play it on your computer, laptop. You've got a plethora of freaking homebrews that you could throw in. Like you could modify a Wii, you could modify fucking a PSP, a PS Vita. Like you've got all these different fucking choices. That is just like
Yeah.
the definitive way.
Well, it's
Because
easy,
I-
it's easy to emulate.
Exactly. And I'm a retro
Also-
collector, and I'll be the first one to say I love collecting, but it is a very expensive hobby to get into, especially now. I got into it like right at that time where the prices were still really good, so I was able to get a lot of the stuff that I want for fairly reasonable prices. And I still kind of can because I've got connections to the store here, but it's like it's a very, very jarring task. Like, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. So
How much-
emulation.
Yeah, that's
How's-
kind of the thing with retro collecting. You just got to be prepared for what the price is. And
I was
also
getting
you-
that. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna
on.
say also you just got to be aware of where to find stuff, whether it's eBay, Amazon, flea markets, and also tell legits from fakes because a lot of fake cartridges have been popping up, especially on GameStop, where people will just replace like we'll get like $2 sports games and try to disguise it as a Chrono Trigger cart.
Yeah, off topic, but that is one thing that's really plaguing the Game Boy Advance market right now on eBay. Is there's a lot of repos out
Well,
there, and they're not legitimate.
because they're easier to make.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say to Dave right here, did you find a copy of Little Samson yet?
Little Sam's.
Is that which system is that for again? Is that for
NES.
Super?
NES.
Oh, NES.
You're never gonna find that. That's like the holy
Shut up,
grail.
Drill! Don't ruin the joke.
Might as well ask him for Nintendo World Championships Gold Edition.
Oh, you son.
You
I'm
fuck.
trying to remember. Like, I know the name of the game, like, and I know it's super expensive.
It's
there
a
was a
Taito
game-
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Little Samson. So.
Well, no, like I was commenting saying that I know that I know that name, and so I'm familiar with like, oh yeah, that's a freaking rare ass game. But there was one that the shop here got like a few months back. I fucking forget what it is. It was like up there in price though, something obscure and fucking rare as shit. But yeah, you know that's the huge issue is that even like the more run of the mill stuff, like you can find some of the run of the mill stuff like fairly decent prices. Like, you know, $10-15 is not too extreme to ask, but it's just like I can't even comment how it's going to be 10 years from now. It's like, you know, if those $10-15 games or even those $5 games are going to start going up in price, being like $20-30 a piece,
You have
you
to
know,
worry
so
about batteries.
well,
Even-
batteries can be replaced. I mean, it's not a huge deal breaker there, because if you know how to do simple soldering, it's not that hard to replace a battery. Or fuck, you could find anybody who, like, any electrician or anybody at these retro secondhand stores will probably do it for you if you ask them to. So it's like, you know, that's not an issue of itself. It's just a matter of just, you know, just
scalping.
an ever-growing market. And one thing that I've kind of noticed this, and I don't necessarily know if it's like the definitive thing, but like with the rise of internet popularity and stuff like YouTube, and, you know, gaming becoming a more prominent thing in the mainstream, you know, a popular YouTube recommends like, oh hey, you should play Run Saber, for example. Run Saber used to sit at like being like a $25-30 game, and then all of a sudden people started talking about it. You know, Mike Matei mentions it, and now it's like a freaking $60-80 game. So it's like, you know, I do think that there is this weird thing where like internet personalities can influence the market. Like if they happen to recommend a game and have a huge following, the demand for the game is going to get even higher. So, you know, I hands down emulation. That's
Yeah.
the way to go.
If the
Emulation.
scalping is going to get crazy in the next 10 years, I guarantee it.
But yeah,
I'm actually with
honestly,
Dave
it
here.
just depends on how far you're willing to go. Like, if you really just want to collect, if you really just want to start collecting, then you just gotta be aware of the market. And there's also like I mean, if you want the best quality out of your system, there's the analog systems, but those are like premium prices. So yeah, they're not ideal for the average consumer.
Also,
I
someone's
guess if you have
typing.
a Switch, you could just do
Mogul.
the SNES games, but you're not gonna get
Oh, sorry.
everything. So yeah, emulating would probably be the best option,
Okay.
depending on what you want to play.
I actually agree with emulation, because if even I remotely want to get into like collecting retro games, it is going to be expensive as fuck, to where, you know, I won't even have enough to buy one game, because it's going to be so
Yeah.
much money.
Yeah, it really just depends on what you want. I mean, obviously, there's even a few PS2 games I really want, but I'm never probably gonna get them because they're so expensive.
Nah.
Yeah.
Like a Silent Hill game, right?
I see.
Well,
I see.
That price was inflated, but that's another topic.
Yeah, I see someone in the chat said that even bad games can be influenced by like internet personalities becoming
Like, who
higher.
the
That
fuck
is true.
gonna- Like, who the fuck is gonna start buying out Lester the Unlikely?
Well,
I mean,
no,
if someone talks
Shitty-ass
about it,
game.
then
let me comment on that. Actually, no shit. So my local store had
Shout out
all
to
the
Lester.
NES. Well, not that. Had all the NES Bible games and had tons of them, and he sold them all. Like as soon as that episode dropped, when the AVGN like commented on all these Bible games, like those things sold like fucking hotcakes. So it's
True.
like, you know, it can, like, even games that this reviewer is saying like, oh, these games are awful. Like people are like, oh well, he obviously made a whole fucking stint about him, so I'm gonna freaking own him physically. So yeah, the video game market as a whole just is a fucking fickle thing. It really is.
Imagine
True.
like Lester the Unlikely being like $60 in like 2 years. They fucking
Dude,
crazy.
Shout out to Lester.
Gotta
We're at
start
a
stocking
time.
up.
We're at a time where games are like even fucking shovelware games are still getting like expensive now.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
Well,
some of the like very common like sports games and other things are starting to go up in price a little bit, but not by much.
Yeah.
But like obviously retro games are getting more expensive over time.
Yeah.
Like,
Shout out.
even the very common one.
Well, I think
Shout-
there's.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna. There's a finite amount of these games because they're not digital, or they. I mean, obviously, original ones aren't. So as they deteriorate, we lose some because they just go bad, or people, trash them. Something happens. They're just gonna be less and less of them as time goes on. They're gonna get more and more expensive.
Someone wanted to give a shout out?
Yeah, shout outs to the guy who bought 200 copies of Sneak King for the Xbox 360 in 10 years, man. You'll probably be able to, make $100 off all that.
Unfucking believable, man.
Look,
$200?
why wasn't that game backwards compatible?
I don't know. Sneak
Ask
King.
Microsoft. That ain't up. Ask Microsoft and Burger King.
Man.
Maybe they couldn't come to a consensus.
They need to
not.
look.
Maybe Phil Spencer wouldn't try the Impossible Whopper, and so Burger
don't
King
wanna
was like,
buy-
"Fuck you,
man.
we're not gonna make this backwards compatible
Look,
for you."
They
fucking
need to
console.
They need to make the crossover game of McDonald's versus Burger King.
They make me want to buy another console to continue the backward compatibility shit. I see what they're doing. Nice try, Mike.
It's a business strategy.
Very
Yup.
clever.
But yeah, I guess we can move on to the last one. I think.
Okay, so here's the
Yes,
final
please.
question. Is
Please.
Nintendo doing a decent job by preserving all of these classic Super Nintendo games currently? Tell us your opinion on this.
No, they're not.
Not
No.
really, no.
No.
No, they're not.
So
'Cause-
not even in the
'cause
eShop,
why?
right?
No, I'm gonna tell
Well,
you this.
you gotta do the SNES online thing, but that
Well-
took like what over a year to happen.
But here's the thing: why would people pay? It's $20. It's cheap, but why lock it behind a subscription? Is beyond me.
I think it's just to give people an incentive, and
The-
I think
the
it's
only
so
reason it's
fickle.
cheap,
It's
but-
so fickle because I think either way people would have complained because they would have said, "Oh, we gotta rebuy them again."
They could just transfer the data they want. For
Yes, they
the virtual
should.
console.
Well,
They-
but here's my argument with that.
Yeah.
If they had gone the virtual console route, and yeah, true, people are going to complain that they're going to have to rebuy their fucking games again. But at least you'd have the option to buy the ones you want.
That's
And
true.
I agree.
That's a
The
good
problem
point.
with this
And they're cheaper.
service and these apps is that, especially now, they're not updating them monthly anymore. They're just like, we're just going to update them whenever we fucking feel like, and there's no
I don't like
guarantee
that.
it'll actually even be games you're interested in.
I
Like,
didn't like
you look at the NES one, for example, and it's missing some of the like prime examples, like all the Castlevania games. Well,
Yeah,
here's
but
Konami,
that's
like, we're gonna re-release our own games in our own collection. So it's like, it's this kind of thing. It's just like they're not doing justice. Like, yeah, I will say the multiplayer functionality with these apps is cool. Like, I like the idea that you could play these games online with friends. That's something they should have fucking visited in the Wii days. I don't know why the fuck they never did that. But it's just one of those things where it's like they're just not. It seems like this is more of an afterthought, than if
It's
anything.
like it's a money grab, basically. They're
Well, I
like
think-
we can make more money out of these if we
I
release
think
them.
what I was gonna say is I think it also has to do with rights issues and publishers agreeing because Konami's gonna just do their own collection similar with Contra, and Square Enix just did the SNES ones with Secret of Mana and the one that never came over.
Hold on, let me
Yeah,
get
it's
my
not gonna
Switch.
Tetsu 3.
Let me get my Switch real quick.
No, but I think there's some things. I just think Nintendo doesn't have a big focus on a lot of these. I mean, besides the fact that they keep putting out mini consoles, I think it's just a small incentive to make you do the online, but it's not their major point. Not anymore.
Yeah.
They're kind of more focused on some of the newer stuff, and they're just like, well,
Yeah,
if you want to,
kinda
but
moving forward.
yeah, precisely. which is not a bad thing because I've played half the games on there anyways. But it's
Yeah.
when they're my biggest issue is that they're shutting down emulation sites, but they're not preserving their own stuff. So if they're not going to do it and they're not going to allow
Exactly.
people to do it, who is?
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's
when
just
they
a
went
fickle
after
thing at the
when
honestly,
I-
that's just a gray area at the end
When
of the
when
day.
Steam is offering retro art for people
that
for
is
free,
that is true.
like what's going on? Nintendo?
I really think personally Nintendo is just out of touch with the consumer, because look at it on this way: we haven't gotten Virtual Console on Switch yet. Instead, we got this Nintendo Online bullshit, which I really wish they didn't do. I wish they would have just did Virtual Console like they did with all the previous consoles. It would have saved
Exactly.
us the hassle of having to fucking get the service that we have to pay for to get access to these games. Like, and if you were gonna do that anyway with this service, at least they could do is add more games to it, like weekly, not just every month.
Yeah.
And it's
it
not
would've
even
been
that
real.
anymore. It's
Yeah,
like
it's not
whenever the
even
fuck they
every
feel like.
Yeah.
Well, I
like-
suppose.
I completely disagree with that practice. I really think they should have just brought back Virtual Console like they should have with the Wii U, and then give us the option of getting all the
would've
games
been
that we
nice.
bought on the Wii U and put it on the Switch.
The Wii U
Yeah.
even had N64 games you could buy.
Well, and
It had
yeah.
Wii games, it had DS games, it had like everything.
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
well, DS games would probably be harder to
Yeah,
do
I mean that
on
obviously there's a difference
Switch.
there, but the point
but
I'm
they
making,
still had it.
they had a lot more stuff than you know.
Yeah. The case
Yeah.
in point, though, is that there was
I think
more in terms of variety with the Virtual Console.
Oh yeah.
I think
they
the other
they could have
problem
made
was-
more money that way instead of doing this Nintendo Online shit, which I don't even think is helping them at all.
Well, I don't think it's their
personally.
focus. I think
No,
it's supposed to be a little
not.
extra bonus, but I kind of think they don't. Not that they don't care about these games, but they're just like, well, we know people want Virtual Console, but we're not really that interested in doing
and
it again.
also
Here you
the
go.
fact that other devs are doing their own collections like Capcom, Konami.
Or yeah, Mega Man Legacy Collection, Mega Man X Legacy Collection.
But this is the thing though, is that like if they wanted to preserve these older games, they should have just done what they've been doing for like the past decade, was doing Virtual Console. Why'd they just
Yeah.
decide
Well,
now? Okay,
Wii
we're gonna
Virtual
do a
Console
Nintendo
doesn't even
Online
exist.
and completely ruin the whole fucking thing for no damn reason. It's because
And
Nintendo is out of touch.
Well, what's kind of even more interesting is that the Wii one actually had Japanese games like Rondo of Blood, and also a few SNES ones too. Well, Super Famicom actually. Too bad it doesn't exist anymore.
I think as
you could just
more cards get
Home,
good.
flash mod your Wii and download everything online.
And that's
Yeah,
that's
but-
exactly
Yeah.
what I did.
Yeah, but it's still kind of sad that the Virtual Console on the Wii doesn't exist anymore.
I think as more carts get expensive and as more games become inaccessible due to whatever reason with like licensing and everything else, then we're really going to start seeing how this stuff is a good idea and how some other things are bad ideas, like them taking, the emulators and all the stuff and taking down these sites is not
Also-
good.
Well, emulators I mean, actually, for some games, emulators are crucial for their popularity, longevity. Or like, for example, Earthbound didn't sell well when it was first released originally.
Yeah, so it never came out to the States, right?
No, it did. It just horrible advertising.
Well,
There's
not
I could go
other
on and on
than-
about it.
Mm.
But Earthbound itself was just they did a shit job of advertising it. But later on, there was a website called Starman.net online. There was a huge community around it. People surrounding this game, loved this game, going back playing the original Mother 1, and then translating the whole Mother 3. It was all because they had access to play it online. That's where most people played Earthbound for the first time. And if we didn't have emulation, that would never happen. Earthbound wouldn't be the cult classic it is today.
Yeah. So I don't know why, like, you heard that Steam is taking advantage of RetroArch. I don't know why they don't just decide to work with these people, put some people in jobs, and try
It's-
to get it to where, yeah, it works out for everyone, but you're not trying to shove down a monthly paywall to the point where people just want to play older games and that's it.
It's probably just the way Japan looks at like emulation and piracy in general. because it's considered illegal there, and people have even gotten in trouble for having modded consoles.
It's considered illegal here too, you know, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strict.
Good luck trying to find anybody who's going to enforce that law.
but I think we're talking about this, but we did forget we aren't Japanese. They're still very, very different. The way they set
Yeah.
up a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
So from our perspective, sure, it's stupid moves, but for them, they have just completely different ideals and way of doing things.
Yeah.
And
Like,
so, you can
I
can
mean, for the
argue
longest-
they're very rooted in their traditions over
Yeah.
there, and so it would be very hard for them to break centuries of how they run their businesses.
Yeah, but it
And-
hasn't. But the problem is it hasn't stopped them before. Why is it now? It's an issue.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to retread old ground about Virtual Console again. I don't think it's necessarily that they're not trying to. They didn't want it. They just didn't want to do Virtual Console in general, but people were asking for it. They just didn't want to keep up with these old games because every single time they have to, for a new system, try to figure out how to emulate it properly and do this properly. I kind of think they kind of want to stop with it. So this
I mean,
SNES
Well, that
online.
makes no sense. You were essentially still getting those games, but on in an online service. So that's kind of contradictory on their part. If that's what they, think in their heads, right?
But but in that case, they would have sold all of the games. I think they're doing a few because people wanted it,
Yeah,
but they don't
I
want to
know
sell them all again because it's not about money. It's just that they don't necessarily are interested in keeping up with these old games.
Oh,
30
I know.
years in the future.
I know,
also-
but I think what they don't seem to realize is that the market is still pretty big for that, and I personally think it's just much better for them to do this because it helps them in the long run if they were to keep doing this. The service
Yeah.
alone is not worth it
Well, no,
for what
but
you're
you're
getting.
forgetting this is Nintendo.
Yeah,
There's a lot of companies who care. That this is one of the few companies that might care about making games more than actually making money from their games. Not that they don't
Yeah.
care about money, but
But yeah, it feels like emulation. Well, it feels like preserving old games for Nintendo's always been a fickle thing. Even back with the Wii and the Wii U, and now with the Switch.
it's still a lot of potential for them to find out a way to do this properly without gouging people severely each month. I think one way to do it because people they've been wanting stuff like GameCube games on the Virtual Console forever now, and
yeah, but
it's
Yeah,
they just won't do it.
I think there might
I
be
think
more
it's-
reasons besides that
I
because
think
they did
the
Wii
reason
games.
is because of the Switch hardware. There has been some people there's the modding community who've tried to get Dolphin working on Switch and saying that the CPU's been holding them back and that they might need a new revision to get it working. So maybe
really?
Nintendo could be holding off on the new Switch to get GameCube games working.
I mean, yeah, but they've never done GameCube for Wii U or Wii either.
Yeah.
They did
You
DS
can
games,
play,
Wii games,
you
but they
can
didn't
play
do GameCube games.
games natively on the Wii U through modding because
Well-
it still has Wii hardware.
Yeah, isn't that the updated version? Shouldn't it be able to handle GameCube games?
Yeah.
If you
Actually,
can
we
if you
should.
can homebrew it or something like that, I'm pretty sure it should be able to.
I mean, Wii U game. I don't know. Could not play GameCube games, by the way. If you were, it is. I know the Wii did, but GameCube, the Wii U did not play GameCube games. If you weren't aware.
Yeah, unless you modded it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's it's
yeah.
weird, but I think if they do have another model or revision in the future, it should be something that they should consider at least.
Yeah, but then that dwells into another idea is how would people respond if they had GameCube games on Switch, but it's it's exclusive only to the new model because of hardware limitations.
I mean, everyone has
Yeah.
to upgrade eventually, right? I mean, you can't every time someone says this, oh, I don't want to get this version or this version, and it has these perks. Eventually, people are gonna get it because if the incentive is there, they are going to want that new system.
I mean, of course, but not everyone can afford it. I mean, I can barely afford my own Switch. Getting another revision is still expensive.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think it should be I think it should be reasonable. It shouldn't be put out right now immediately. Maybe after a couple of years later into this console generation that we're about to go into for next gen, then maybe 2 or 3 years they could do another model and then see if people like it or not, offer it, discount it. That would be a good way to get people into it.
Yeah, I mean GameStop does their trade-in deals,
Oh yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, if you're willing to put up with GameStop anyway.
I did once by like porting over. I think I gave them like the first Last of Us, and I got like Last of Us remastered discounted. It'd be a good incentive to do. Just sell
I
your
got
old
that for
shit.
free.
Yeah, but
The
like
only
back in the past, you could just sell the old game and get the new one.
Yeah.
the only downside with some of those like trade offers that like companies like GameStop offer is you don't have a way to like transfer your data, and Nintendo is really weird about how they do their data transfers. So it's not like
Yeah.
something where you could just put it all up on the cloud and then get it all back, you know. So it's really one of those weird like double-edged sword sort of things. You could do that, but then it's like you might run the risk of losing all your data, or you just dish out the money for another model, do the proper transfer like on your own, and then go and sell the old one.
So basically, it's a lot of kinks they have to work out before they even try something like this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I figured as much. But we're gonna end it here. I think this was a good discussion. So we're gonna start doing these outros. So Mr. Moogle, where can we find you?
You can find me on YouTube under Moogle Fantasy, and you can find me on Twitter under Mog Fantasy, because for some reason I can't put Moogle for some weird reason. And my Twitch is under the same name as my Twitter, and that's pretty much it.
Next up, we have Mr. Drillbit.
So you can find me on Twitter at Drillvit777.
No, we can't.
And I do have a YouTube, but I don't really use it that much. So I'm mostly active on Twitter, so that's what I go on.
Washinator, what's your outro, good sir?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel under the name Washinator, and my Twitter handle is @Washinator.
Kaneki?
YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. You can follow me on all those three platforms under the name Rule Order. And those refund policies, Nintendo need to work on that. With the pre-order.
Next up is Daybreaker.
You guys can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube at Daybreaker Rain. I'm pretty much active on my Twitter mostly, but I have actually signed up to be a gameplay recorder for the Infinite Ammo Syndicate, so I'll hopefully be a little bit more active on my YouTube going forward.
Yeah, I think I used your gameplay like a little bit earlier. It was the Star Fox gameplay, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I got it in
Which
there.
one?
It was the Super Nintendo one to fit with the
Ah.
theme of the podcast, and I used BSNES and the overclocking for Super Effects games. Which, by the way, if you have not tried BSNES, shout out to Bew. Fucking try it out. It's a really awesome emulator, probably the best Super Nintendo emulator right now for PC, and it's the most actively supported because like ZSNES hasn't been updated in like 12 years. So
Mhm.
Also, yeah,
I've never used
it's
that.
it's implemented in RetroArch as well. So if you want to do it easier, then you could just download the cores and play it through there.
Yeah, try them out.
oh yeah, for sure.
All right, next up is If It's Not Fun.
You can find me at If It's Not Fun on YouTube, If It's Not Fun on Twitter. I do some cool videos. I don't know, check them out.
I like that name.
Thanks.
It's like if it's not fun, it's not cool. I like
Yeah, if
that
it's not
slogan.
fun, why bother?
Yeah, why bother?
Oh, from
That's
words
all.
of wisdom.
I like that slogan a lot. So you can find me on Twitter at RentOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. I'm not really doing much outside of I uploaded some stuff on the Silent Hill Resident Evil 8 rumors, and I also play some WWF Attitude. So if you enjoy some wrestling streams, I've been doing those recently.
Damn, Ren getting body on WWF.
That game is old and the controls are dated, so I do have some criticisms about that game. But yeah, I'm gonna get this podcast uploaded for you guys, and then on Sunday we're gonna be talking with the other crew about like Game of the Year for 2019, what we thought was our personal favorites. So look forward to that. I know the week after that we might be doing some Killer Instinct, so gonna get my ass kicked, but I will be streaming that too.
Ultra.
Look, Ren can't catch this Hisako.
Look, I'm out of practice. Otherwise, you will get bodied, sir.
About to catch these daggers, son.
Yeah. So
Nah,
maybe
LJ, go.
maybe one day, since I can emulate it, I can do Killer Instinct Classic on RetroArch 2. That'd be interesting as
you
well.
could emulate the arcade version too.
Yeah. But this is the Infinite Ammo Syndicate signing off. We will see you guys later. And once again, take care.
Take it easy, guys.
Later.
Jana.
Take it easy. Bye.
Fucking boomers.
Bye.
Fuck you,
So.
mother-